Hi guys, it's G-Economics here, and just continuing the A2 microeconomics series on labour market theory. In this particular video I will be showing you how to derive the equilibrium position in a perfectly competitive labour market. So let's get to it. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's very useful to just go back and rewind to think about our perfectly competitive product market, because the diagrams and the equilibrium positions, they fall in quite nicely and tie in quite nicely with one another. So this is for the product market, okay? Not the labour market, the product market. A diagram you'll all be familiar with, the long run equilibrium position in a perfectly competitive market. This highly theoretical situation which we're trying to move towards. And you'll know that the equilibrium position here is at the point where MC is equal to MR. So you can see that at that point there, there's price AR equals MR. And it's also, you will know, ladies and gentlemen, the marginal cost curve can also be referred to as the supply curve, and the average revenue curve can also be referred to as the demand curve. So it's also the point at which demand is equal to supply. And we can see here that the demand curve is perfectly elastic. I think it's good to just have that in your mind as we now approach tackling the equilibrium position in the labour market, which is over here. So, in my previous video I considered the demand curve for labour, and now I just want to talk to you about deriving the equilibrium level of employment in this perfectly competitive labour market. So we've got the MRP of labour curve here, no need to go into that again. The wage, now you can see here perfectly elastic, perfectly elastic. So you can see already the similarities here with this diagram. This is the wage being paid, and in the perfectly competitive labour market we are assuming that we can employ as many units of labour as we want at the same wage. That's the crucial thing here. And so as a consequence of that, we're going to call it the wage curve just for a moment. This is perfectly elastic. And you can see I've said here W equals AC equals MC. And I'll come back to that in a moment. Now you can see the point at which the demand curve intersects this curve being the supply curve, that is the point of equilibrium in this labour market. But I just want to explain a couple of things to you further, particularly with regard to why we can say that W equals AC equals MC. And for that, I would just simply recommend a little table as follows, with quantity of labour, the wage rate, the total cost, the average cost, and the marginal cost. Now you don't need to go into this in enormous detail and depth, but we are saying in a perfectly competitive labour market we can pay all the workers the same wage. So 10, 10, 10. What would the total cost be here? 10, 20, 30. What would the average cost be? So that would be the total divided by the number of units. So that would be 10, 20 divided by 2, 10, 30 divided by 3, 10. And what's the marginal cost, i.e. the change in total cost from employing an additional unit of labour? Well, it's going from 10 to 20, so the marginal cost there is 10. From 20 to 30, so the marginal cost there is 10. And so this is the reason why we can make this assumption that W equals AC equals MC, in the same way that in the product market we can say that price equals average revenue equals marginal revenue. Very important that you understand that, ladies and gentlemen. We also know that this is demand. We know that this curve, because it's the marginal cost curve, it's supply. So again, this is very similar to demand and supply. And so the equilibrium of employment, the equilibrium level of employment here on this diagram, again is at the intersection of demand and supply, in the same way as it is over here in the product market. But it's also, look, there's marginal cost, there's marginal revenue. it's also at the point at which MC equals the marginal revenue. Look familiar, ladies and gentlemen? Of course it does. Look over here in the product market again. So these theories, you can see how they are tying in, and they are very similar in terms of their analysis and the knowledge that you need to have in order to explain them. The only difference being obviously that this is demand in this case, perfectly elastic, and this is supply. Obviously make sure that you don't mix those up. So why is it that in this labour market we would employ up to QL but not beyond it? Well, again, look at your diagram, ladies and gentlemen. If we were employing Q1 units of labour, the additional revenue that that would bring in is shown here. What's the additional cost? The additional cost is here. Clearly, the marginal revenue, the additional revenue is greater than the additional cost, so it is worth employing that particular unit of labour. As we move along, same thing applies. Although the gap is narrowing, it's still preferable to keep employing people up to the point at which MC equals MR. It would be illogical, would it not, and irrational to go beyond that point, because then, look, ladies and gentlemen, the additional revenue is now less than the additional cost, and the gap is getting bigger. And so that is the reason why the equilibrium level of employment here is at the point, the intersection of demand and supply, or where MC equals MR. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Bye for now. See you with the next instalment on labour markets.